Our next panelist is Steve Blum. He's the president of Tellus Venture Associates. It's a management, planning, and business development consultancy who has worked for a number of California cities like Santa Cruz, Salinas, Berkeley, and Oakland, close by here. He has a 30-year history in the industry and was one of the people who was involved in the launch of DirecTV. So, Steve.
Thanks. I work with a lot of these programs. I think at one point all these different programs on a regular basis, and I just had a few thoughts about how they all work together or don't, as the case may be. One point I'd like to make is that public subsidies provide the greatest benefit when you can use those public subsidies to leverage private investment. We heard this morning one of the panelists said $160 billion in private investment in telecommunications infrastructure. That's 2 or 3 orders of magnitude more than the public spending in the same period for the same type of infrastructure. So if you can use public assets, money and other assets to leverage private investment, you're going to get much further ahead. City of Ontario, you just heard from, is a good example of that, where you can take the city's ability to direct growth and plan for growth and set standards for a city and use it not just to improve the infrastructure in new development, which is a major issue, but also to provide an incentive to incumbents to upgrade. And what you see is, you see incumbent money where they're spending money on landline upgrades flowing towards competitive projects, often entrepreneured by cities. A good example of leveraging private money is up in San Leandro, just across the bay here. City had conduit that it owned, used it for its traffic signal network. Local entrepreneur put in $3 million, built an 11-mile fiber ring through the commercial and industrial areas of the city. The city came back with an Economic Development Administration grant, about $2 million, put in another 8 miles of conduit. The entrepreneur came back in, put more millions of dollars into putting more fiber into it. And now San Leandro is the poster child in the East Bay, and I think throughout California, for having municipal fiber network that was, it is a private network, but it is also controlled to a certain degree by the city. It was built and it's being provisioned in a way that meets the city's public policy objectives. So again, you can use those public funds to leverage private investment if you're doing it in a cooperative basis. Second point, and this is something that it's already been talked about today, but I want to give my own personal outlook on it. Public subsidies, public broadband subsidies are largely siloed. I mean, I see that on a working basis every day. Now, it's fine if you're the guy at the bottom of the silo and somebody's dropping money on you, or you're up at the top doing the dropping, you don't see the silos there. But if you're up at the top level, like at a city or a county, trying to coordinate things, trying to bring competition into your market, or just get upgrades done, the fact that there's very specific programs for very specific purposes that aren't being coordinated is a huge barrier to getting things done. I can give you example. I give you an example of down in Anza in Riverside County. There are 2 grants pending now. Well, if you call the Connect America, I consider the Connect America Fund a grant, but however you want to characterize that. But subsidies. So the Connect America Fund is going to give several $1 million to Frontier, assuming the merger goes through, to upgrade service there to the 10 megabits down, 1 megabit up level. Anza Electric Cooperative has a draft resolution now that'll be going before the California Public Utilities Commission, again for a few $1 million, to build a fiber to the home network there that meets, well, it meets the California Advanced Services Fund's benchmark of 6 down, 1.5 up. It'll do a lot better than that. But you've got 2 mutually exclusive programs there that are going to be overlapping, building out infrastructure in that area. One project is going to be building modern infrastructure that'll be future-proofed for generations. The other is going to basically do a marginal upgrade on copper plant. We don't need both of those projects there. You should take the money from the copper plant and put it elsewhere in California where there's greater need. Another example, City of Richmond, again, across the bay and just up to the north. Cities put in infrastructure for its own internal use. You know, they've got the CalNet program to work with, they've got city budget to work with, and they've built out some infrastructure. The school district has used E-rate funding and California Teleconnect Fund to build out infrastructure to the schools. But guess what? Those two networks don't touch each other. They don't coordinate with each other. And then the Public Housing Agency, a separate agency, comes along, and they want to light up public housing projects using California Advanced Services Funds grants, and they can't do it because nobody at the school district asked whether or not they needed, whether or not this network should be designed in an intelligent way. Nobody at the city did. Nobody at the Public Housing Agency even thought about it until they saw this grant program come up. So you see, you have these uncoordinated programs driven by people with very specific needs and objectives that aren't being run in a way that meets the overall goals of the community. Third point I'd like to make is that when you do this, middle mile should be the priority. And Michael Ort was just up here from Praxis Networks. That is an excellent example of how things work well when everybody works together. So Digital 395 was built with money from the federal stimulus program and the California Advanced Services Fund. Suddenlink, the incumbent cable company on the eastern side of the Sierra, came in and literally hooked up to the network through a switch and increased the capacity for all their customers by a factor of 10, no additional cost. Frontier, you heard, is working with Digital 395 to upgrade. Part of that is driven. I mean, there's a good business case for it, and I'll give Frontier, absolute credit for working well with the California Advanced Services Fund program. But that's also partly driven by their regulatory proceeding right now to take over Verizon's systems. And there's going to be a requirement, assuming everything holds, there will be a requirement in that permission that the CPUC grants that says that Frontier must work with California Advanced Services funded middle mile projects and other projects similar. The Kirby project you just heard about, that's another example of projects that Frontier will be working with. But again, they're using, in this case, the CPUC is using the authority it has in a way that is trying to get people to work together. And where that happens, it's great. You've got a lot of different programs on the eastern side of the Sierra: schools, libraries, hospitals, public safety agencies, government agencies. Those are all slowly but surely coming online, and you're starting to see the money that the public money that's being spent on broadband, it is being used in a way now that can buy 10, 100, 1,000 times as much capacity as they had before, just by the fact that middle mile infrastructure is there. So I just say, just kind of my basic points here is that private capital works, middle mile works, and intelligent management of public subsidies work.
Thank you very much, and that's a great summary. I have to say that we've seen with BTOP just huge benefits from partnerships like that.